I'm delighted to have here on Outsiders. He's a regular, he's a great friend of this show. He's the editor of Post Millennial, a very brave man who fights the forces of the left in America. He's joining us live from California. Andy Ngo, so great to see you again. Andy, how are you?
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Andy, you're looking a lot healthier than last time we saw you, when you'd just been beaten up by the Antifa thugs and we spoke to you the next day. What has happened since then? And also tell us about the fact that you've now found you're at war apparently with Facebook and the social media who are trying to ban you. So tell us about both those stories.
Well, we're now coming up to 5 months since I was beaten and robbed at the end of June. There has not been a single arrest. So unfortunately, I don't have any positive updates in that regard. It's disappointing, but not surprising. The latest issues that I've been dealing with is that I'm currently in Twitter jail because I tweeted out a verifiable empirical claim to Chelsea Clinton, countering her claim that there's an epidemic of trans homicides in the United States.
We've got the tweet up on our screen right now, and you're right, the tweet was factual. Anyone who wants to go and check the data can, and yet tweeting something that is factual but perhaps not politically correct can get you banned from Twitter. Now, Twitter have said you've got to delete that before they'll allow you to come back on. Will you delete it?
I've refused so far. I don't think that I should be forced to accept a false reality in order to be on one of the largest social media platforms in the world, particularly one used by journalists and one that is used by people to counter fake news. It is fake news to say there's an epidemic of trans people being killed in the US. We have the data on the homicide rates of cis men, cis women, and based on the data gathered by the Human Rights Campaign, the same organization that Chelsea Clinton cited, shows that the number of trans homicides in the US is actually, rates per 100K is actually lower than for cis men and women.
So, I mean, Twitter's an enormous platform, particularly for the sort of work you do as editor-at-large of Post Millennial and a citizen journalist as well. So that's going to really impact your work and how you get your message across. So at the end of the day, if Twitter don't see sense, you're going to have to delete a factual tweet to be allowed back on that massive platform.
Yes, I think people on the left who are cheering on my current suspension should be concerned about what precedents it sets for them. You know, I'm continuing to speak out about this because I think what it demonstrates really is the legacy LGBT groups in the US, ever since same-sex marriage was legalized across the country here, is that there exists a vast infrastructure and sources of donations for all these organizations. And they, instead of going away because the battle has been won, they now decide to take on the whole trans issues. And because trans are widely accepted in the United States, they have to peddle in misinformation and disinformation.
Andy, I want to ask you about your reaction to something else that we've seen this week, and it's not about the big corporate social media platforms, but rather governments. We've got a grab from Angela Merkel from Germany, and she's talking about basically why they need to take away your freedom of speech and our freedom of speech to keep everybody safe. Let's have a listen to this grab, and I want to hear your reaction to this, Andy.
Und all die, die dauernd behaupten, sie dürfen nicht mehr ihre Meinung sagen, denen muss sie einfach sagen, wer seine Meinung sagt. Und wenn sie prononciert ist, der muss damit leben, dass es Widerspruch gibt. Es gibt keine Meinungsfreiheit zum Nulltarif, dass alle zustimmen. Aber die Meinungsfreiheit kennt Grenzen. Und die beginnen da, wo gehetzt wird, da, wo Hass verbreitet wird. Die beginnen da, wo die Würde anderer Menschen verletzt wird. Und dagegen werden und müssen wir uns stellen in diesem Hause. Und das werden wir auch hinbekommen, meine Damen und Herren. Denn sonst ist diese Gesellschaft nicht mehr das, was sie glauben.
Andy, I hope your German is nice and fluent there. She was auditioning for a part in the remake of Downfall, I think, particularly with those gestures towards the end there. But seriously, Andy, Angela Merkel was talking about the need for Grenze, for borders around free speech, for walls around what you can and cannot say. So she was saying that free speech is all very well, but if you use free speech, and this is where she went a bit, she really pushed the limits. She said hate speech is wrong, which we can debate. But she went on to say if you're showing disrespect to other people, then we need to have borders against that sort of speech. What does it mean? And she says this protects our free society. Andy, what does it mean to you when you have someone like Merkel basically saying, forget free speech, it's all about controlled speech?
I think the views that Angela Merkel has is emblematic of the larger liberal establishment in Europe, and a position that you see more and more adopted in the United States. The US has always been a bit of an outlier in this regard because of our First Amendment protections, but you're seeing very mainstream figures on the Democrat left now adopting the European position, which is that hate speech is harmful and infringes on people's rights. Therefore, we should be looking for ways to help control and manage that. And in places where they have control, like universities, for example, you do see infringement of free speech.
Now, the problem is hate speech is very much a fluid term, and as you found out this week, hate speech can just be factual speech that is not politically correct. Its definition shifts, and this week we've also had, last week I should say, Sacha Baron Cohen, Borat, came out and said social media platforms need to really clamp down on hate speech. What's your response to that?
Yeah, so the policy that I was alleged to have violated is that my hateful conduct in that I am inciting violence or harassment or threats against protected groups. And as you brought up, you know, when you give such powerful corporations or governments the power to determine what is hateful conduct, then it opens up this whole Pandora's box of, well, you know, in Germany or Western Europe before it was, you know, limitations on racism, open racism, etc. But now it's more about what Angela Merkel said, you know, infringing on the dignities of others. That's very vague. You see that type of language adopted at some places in the U.S. on institutions or universities. So it's I think it simply comes down to the path to hell is paved with good intentions, and that's what we're seeing here.
So Andy, so you're keeping well. Tell us just briefly, will you be going out with your camera again amongst any Antifa mobs anytime soon? That sounds like the kids. They've got their free speech. Bring them in front of the camera, Andy. Bring them in front of the camera. We want to say hi. Bring them in front of the camera. Yeah, we want to say hi. Free speech for all.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm too recognized now, and I get threats frequently when I go into public, particularly in left-wing places. And so it's no longer safe for me to be documenting protests in person anymore.
Well, keep safe. Andy, you're doing a terrific job. Editor-at-large at Post Millennial magazine. And we look forward to seeing you again in the new year on Outsiders. And have a great Christmas, Andy.
Thank you so much for having me on.